Christian, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
25 years of Snom, 25 years of Snom. It's 2022. 1997 was where it all started, and you were there because you were the one that started it all. Christian Stredicke, founder of Snom Technology back in the day. And I have a few questions for you, which I would like to put to you regarding the very early days of Snom, a little bit about your ideas and how we got to where we are today, and perhaps some of your thoughts about how things will work out in the future as well. So I'd like to start, if I may, by going back to the beginning, to those very early days. And I'd like to ask you, how was the decision to actually make the very first commercially available SIP phone taken? How did you get to that decision? What was it? Was it something that happened? Did it come to you in a flash? Was it a result of a long ongoing discussion that you'd had for maybe several weeks or days or whatever? Tell me, how did it happen?
Yeah, it was not a flash. So actually we did take some time. Actually, it was already a kind of team. So we did some consultancy work. Yeah, okay, maybe that was an accident. We ended up in the telecom industry. We did some work for a telecom test equipment manufacturer. And so what we were kind of looking on, what kind of topics are interesting. And of course, you have a lot of conversations with people from the industry. And I think the aha moment was when we overheard a conversation of some engineers of a large German manufacturer that says this whole VoIP thing is not going to happen, right? Because ISDN is so good and ISDN will be there forever. And we thought these kinds of fools, right? Of course, the internet is unstoppable, and the telephony is the next thing is going to be eaten up by the internet. So I think that was the aha moment where we said, okay, we have to do something in the VoIP space. And I would say in hindsight, the real opportunity was that those big companies are simply stuck in that innovator's dilemma, because their products were so good that they simply could not replace them with anything coming from the VoIP world at that time. I mean, in Snom later, we were happy to make a phone call, right? And of course, the ISDN world was laughing about that because they had passed that stage a long, long time ago. So I think kind of lucky at the end of the day that we just got this point where the large companies were simply unable to really move into that space. And we as a nifty small company without any quality assurance, without any, big customer base could easily slide into that area. So to a certain degree, as I think many startups, it was sheer luck that we found a good topic.
And in those early days, I mean, there was obviously you were making a lot of decisions. You were on the spur of the moment. I would imagine, like you said, there was a lot of luck that was involved. Would you say now that you did everything right back then, or if you could turn the clock back, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I think actually we did a lot of things right. Otherwise, I mean, it would be no 25 years, obviously, right? So many things were right. I think what was obviously a mistake was the form of incorporation, because we registered as a public company from day one. And that means we carry all this overhead all the time. That was not necessary. And that was kind of slowing us down. Obviously not too much, but anyway, that is something where I would say, if I would do that again, I would definitely not make a public corporation from day one. The other little bit more tricky topic is the location, right? Because Berlin is a great place for starting companies, and a lot of great talent there and everything. The thing is, later, eventually, when the company grows, it needs partners, and it needs strategic partners. And at that time, it was already kind of clear that the big German corporations would not be our strategic partner, right? So that means we always had to go either west to America, or we had to go east to Asia, looking for strategic partners, and that's obviously very exhausting.
When we think back to the early days of Snom, and we think about the people that were involved, apart from yourself, that was that was obviously, it was a team that was able to, you know, not just come up with, but put into action and actually bring onto the market a commercially available product. How was that? How did that team in those early days? What were the dynamics like between you? I mean, how did that work? I mean, you were, I seem to remember with the actual, you know, you started off, the first office was down in Tempelhof, is that right? Or down in that direction, there in Berlin, in a kind of industrial area.
The first one was next to the computer science building of the TU. The stone, we didn't throw the stone very far. Yeah. No, I mean, so the initials were all like people I knew from university. And I think that is where really clearly the university is a network. I think that's a very good starting and breeding ground for starting a company. I think if I would have to look for like founders on like an open market, that would have been much more difficult. So I think it's good to know people for many years already and work together with them for years. And also, of course, at that time we were all free, and you know, we didn't have many obligations. So they say, hey, why don't we start a company? And everybody say, yeah, okay, sounds like a good idea. So it was totally doable. So I would say that's invaluable to have this kind of networks. And yeah, I think there's almost no alternative to that. I don't know if there's any website where you can say, oh, looking for a co-founder, you know, maybe online, I don't know, but I think it would be extremely difficult. This is like when you really like go to parties and you know them personally, right? I mean, I went with the co-founder, I went on vacation trips, right? And for years, and I knew them already. And that is something I think you really need that kind of trust to start a company, because obviously things are not always going in a straight line, and you need to have a really tight relationship with the initial core team. And I think that was very, very easy and in Berlin. So I'm really grateful for that. And so later we brought more people on board. They were not directly from that network. We brought some people from other countries, right? So they kind of relocated. And but we also really, I think we really tightly integrated them into the team, right? So the partying went on, right? And it's important if you're coming from another country and you don't really know anybody in Berlin to have these kind of relationships. And I think it worked out quite well. And many of these employees are still on board today, right? Even after 25 years, minus X. But I think that's a sign that worked very, very well.
Okay, so so when you're putting together when you want to put a good team together to do a specific job, what really counts is actually, you know, meeting those people, meeting your peers face to face, and holding those kinds of discussions with them, rather than just you know, putting up an ad in a specialist journal or something and trying to track them down that way. I mean, on that side of things, obviously, in recent years, a lot has changed, of course, with developments in social media and that kind of thing. But you know, you know, going on to my next question, I'd like to know from your side, because you know, you've got these people, you've got an idea of what you want to do. You know, you've got your product. You're starting to you know, you maybe there's a few people sitting up and taking notice. Maybe you've won your first award or something. I think at the CeBIT in 2002, there was a prize for innovative product for the
probably the only VoIP phone I know.
Yeah. Which is obviously quite an achievement, of course, and well worth mentioning. So, you know, what would you say is the secret ingredient? What is it that actually helps you to make those right decisions at the right time?
I think if you want to make a good decision, you need to have a good foundation for the decision. Right? Actually, I learned in university, like one semester, decision making. Right? They're saying how to make decisions. Right? So they really look very systematically on how to prepare decisions, and then eventually how to make the decision. And then once they are made, not to look back and then focus on implementation. So it was like a theoretical foundation for making decisions, and that's also important. I think it's not enough to just essentially have the guts to start something. I think it definitely helps a lot also to have a foundation, both in terms of business administration, right? And of course, in the topic that you're working on. And I think that kind of combination between, on the one hand, on the business side and the industry side, that is essentially, if you're talking about like the secret recipe, that would be the secret recipe, to have both sides. And it's great if you have that in one person, but you definitely need to have that in the team. And in Berlin, actually, they have this interdisciplinary study there, so that you study both at the same time. And I think that's a good thing. And that's definitely a very good starting point for running a company.
Did it ever come to that point where you thought, I've had enough of this, I'm going to give up, that's it? Did you ever have that?
Yeah.
Did that happen?
I mean, of course, we had some really low points. Yeah, I would say many competitors did give up. And we definitely had, I think if we had a certain points where nobody would blame us if we would have given up, right? But obviously we didn't. And the good news was that whenever some of the competitors are dropping out, you're improving your own position, right? So sometimes it's like not the smartest guy is making it, it's the last survivor making it, right? So I think from that point of view, it was good to have this kind of stubbornness to continue doing it. That's probably also like something you need to have to really to make it.
When you look back over the 25 years, Christian, and thinking about people who are in the position today that you were 25 years ago, what's the difference? Do they face different challenges to the challenges you faced then, now, or what's your view on that?
Yeah, of course, many things have changed, especially I would say in Germany. I would say like the venture capital world has definitely matured a lot. So I mean, it was not like there was nothing at that time, but I think today it's probably much easier to get financing quicker. Okay, right now it's a little downturn, but I'm pretty sure that's just a temporary thing. So I would say all in all, that's easier. But might be harder today is really finding good people. I think looking back, I think the amount of really good people they were surrounding me was astounding at the end of the day, right? And I doubt it's going to be that easy today. And that's probably like a much bigger challenge today. And without good people, you cannot build anything. That's that might be the really, really big challenge. And also, part of that problem is that the expectations are sometimes today sky high. So because people see all these super successes where like a kitty sells a company for $20 billion, right? Not too long ago. And people just have so high expectations, and it's obviously not very realistic. So like this kind of humbleness is a problem. And maybe that's and then we're talking about the stubbornness and like the ability to stay with a topic even though you're really hitting some rough terrain is a problem then, because maybe that talent already leaving and hopping over to the next company. I think that might be a really big challenge these days, right? And it does take even if you look at like many companies, it does take 10, 20 years to really get to a point where you can talk about an established company, and that means you need to stay on board for that time, right? Especially the good people need to stay on board for that time. And I think that's really, really challenging these days. That might have been easier 25 years ago.
That's how things have developed over the last 25 years, in which time we've seen Snom grow into the company it is today. And looking into the future, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I imagine that your experience of the last 25 years, particularly your experience of actually starting and establishing a company like Snom, what do you think? And also, of course, key to the whole thing is your understanding of this industry that we're in, telecommunications and digital technologies. How do you see things developing, perhaps in the short, medium, long-term futures here? Are there any particular things that you think people should be looking out for going into the industry?
I think at the end of the day, one of the key topics is the work-life balance, because I think that's one of the main mega trends in the communications industry. Obviously, I can give everybody my WhatsApp account and my direct phone number and everything, right? But I don't want that, because I essentially want to have a conversation that is purely professional, which also means that working hours have to be respected. And also, when let's say I move to another company, I don't want to have to deal with previous contacts. Plus, that's also the interest of the employer, by the way, right? So, and that's something I think that needs to be solved properly. It also plays into this question, like, which is probably important for Snom, like what happens to the desktop phone and how does that balance with a mobile phone? Obviously, the mobile phone has literally like sucked up like industries one after the other, right? I mean, they don't even sell flashlights anymore because everybody has a flashlight on a mobile phone, right? I mean, think about it, right? So, but I think there is definitely a desire from employees to have a device that is clearly office and other devices clearly private. And I think that is something that we will see in the next couple of years being properly addressed.
Do you think the desk phone has a future?
Yeah, absolutely. It's maybe transform a little bit one more time, but I think the habit essentially to just to pick up the phone, talk, and then hang up the handset again, it's just so convenient and so ingrained in the habits of people that this is not going to disappear anytime soon. I mean, I always talk about that movie, the science fiction movie, and they're flying with spaceships to other planets and la, right? And you still see that phone on the wall, right? And I think it's true. So yes, there will be apps, and you can talk from the app to the desktop phone, right? So it will not disappear. It will maybe shift the role a little bit. But I think there will definitely still be phones around us. Also, you have to see it doesn't really cost that much money. If you look at from an employer point of view, the investment is relatively modest compared to many other investments, and it does increase productivity for employees. So there's really no reason to not to spend that money. That's why I think that the desktop phone will not disappear anytime soon.
Interesting. Yeah, we had a comment from one of our partners recently, which I came across, where they said that a desk without a desk phone is not an office desk. So I kind of took that to heart. I thought there's some truth in that. Definitely, there's some truth. But yes, like you say, there's an evolution taking place, and there are no doubt there are some big changes ahead of us. So we'll see where that goes. But thank you very much, Christian, for your time.
No problem.
That was very interesting, hearing from the person who brought the first commercially available SIP telephone to the world, to have a look a little bit into the future and to also retrace your steps a little bit and look back on what's happened in the last 25 years. So that's very, very interesting to hear your comments there. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.